Now we come to a more international and more historical section. So let's start with Juliette Cooper with the thesis on the Corriere della Sera and the Italian crisis after the defeat at the Battle of Adua in 1896 to 1900.
Hi everyone. So as you've heard from my title, I am investigating the crisis period between 1896 and 1900, which in Italian historiography is commonly referred to as the end of the century crisis. And originally what brought me to this topic was I was actually interested in the Battle of Adua, which is used as the beginning point of this crisis in historiography. And what that was it was the last battle in the first, what's called the Italo-Ethiopian War, which was the Italian colonial campaign in Ethiopia. And what happened is that on March 1st of 1896, Italian forces were basically completely annihilated by the newly unified military force of Ethiopia under Menelik II. And this battle has received so much attention because it was the only case where this loss actually stopped a European power from continuing their colonial campaign. And while I was doing research into the significance of, okay, so this happened, I wanted to know why this was so significant for Italian history, as it's been researched much more heavily for African history. I realized that there actually wasn't much being said at all about the period that I was focusing on. So that period is 1896 to 1900. So then my research just kind of evolved into why there was really no attention given to this period. And it led me to realize that it's because at least in English, the leading historiographers who are Dennis Mack Smith and Christopher Duggan, who are actually, Christopher Duggan was Dennis Mack Smith's doctoral student. So that already gives you an idea of what the view of history looks like. They were very focused on modern Italian historiography they did a very great man approach, which essentially means that they focused on the leading figures within Italian history and how they shaped and constructed history. And because this period has a very obvious lack of this grand personality of which that they could use to really construct what actually happened in the end of the century crisis, there's a very noticeable lack of research. So then my thesis really transformed into, so now I know why there's no research on this period, but as it's such an important transition between what's known as Risorgimento Italy and liberal Italy, which starts in 1900, it brought me to the Corriere della Sera, which is my primary source for my thesis. And it was it still is one of the only national newspapers in Italy. And it was established in 1876 in the context of Italian unification and the complexities of that. So then the Corriere was really what I used to see how this paper transforms in this period as a way, since without the presence of a personality, my force really is the newspaper. And basically what I did was I contextualized the paper immediately preceding this period and its foundation and why it was founded. And then I talk about the paper in the crisis, essentially. So basically from between 1896 and 1900, and its shift from something that supports the current Italian government to something that begins to take its own stance on what Italy is essentially supposed to look like. With my last chapter right now, I'm actually still restructuring. I wrote my whole thesis and then realized what I was writing about, so I'm rewriting the whole thing. So right now my last chapter is really dealing with how the paper transforms into a force within itself in this transitional period.